Yes, yes, I know, the question that's on all of your lips right now is this. Nemo, where were you? Why didn't you do your halftime show commentary this year? Why didn't you cover General Conference for us? Why didn't you watch so we don't have to? And also, why are you holding a cookie? Well, the reason I'm holding a cookie is because frankly, I deserve it, and so do you. So go get yourself a cookie and we'll explain exactly what's going on and why I didn't cover General Conference this year. And if you're completely new here, we'll even explain exactly what General Conference is for you. So the General Conference of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is a semi-annual event, and it takes place in April and October of every year. It sees members from all over the world gather both in person at Temple Square in Salt Lake City and in homes and meeting houses around the world for a live broadcast to hear what the prophet of the church has to say. The prophet of the church, they believe, speaks directly for God, and so they want to hear exactly what God has to say to his children through his mouthpiece, the prophet. And this conference in particular was special because it was essentially the crowning of the new Mormon prophet. Now, I was lucky enough to experience being there on Temple Square this year to see General Conference, but the fact that I was in the USA meant that I couldn't do my normal live streams. Now, I promised during my pre-recorded videos that were released over conference weekend that I would be back with the regularly scheduled programming for October 2026. And that remains entirely the plan. But for now, please enjoy this recap of General Conference and my summary of the most interesting points now that I'm back here in the UK. Let's go. Okay, but first things first, I made 5 predictions about what would happen at General Conference. And here's a note for those claiming to be prophets. If you make a prediction, or if you make a prediction under the auspices of religion and call it a prophecy, then I think it's good form to come back and check in every now and then about how well your prediction is doing. So that's what we're going to do here. Now this one, I will confess, does feel somewhat like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because while I was sat there in General Conference, they asked this.
Those opposed to bench.
And that really felt like a full circle moment for me, because my journey into heterodoxy, my journey through this YouTube channel, has always centered around casting opposing votes. And my casting of opposing votes took me into direct contact with the man who is now president of the church. And so at the first sustaining vote of his presidency, or certainly within the first conference of his presidency, I was able to cast an opposing vote. Another frankly easy prediction is we got this from Clement Matswagothata in the Saturday afternoon session, I think it was. Let's take a look.
It felt as though one challenge followed another. We had just buried my mother. 2 weeks later, we stood at a graveside. This time, with my counselor mourning his teenage son.
We did see an increase in this.
President Dallin H taught.
As has already been quoted in this conference, President Dallin H recently said,
As President Oaks has taught,
John Ute was the worst for it by far that I saw, because he was so desperate to quote Dallin H that when he was quoting Jesus Christ, he quoted Dallin H as quoting Jesus Christ. Take a look.
From President Oaks, quote, during his ministry, Jesus thought, behold, I am the light. I have set an example for you.
It reminds me of this. The fact that John Ute would even think to do this kind of quoteception in order to get himself an extra point on the scoreboard of quoting Dallin H tells me just where the priorities are of those who are speaking at conference. It also speaks to the legacy left by the previous prophet, Russell M. Nelson, and the frankly sycophantic behaviour that was often directed towards him. He was quoted ad nauseum, and it seems that that same prophet worship is still alive and well under Dallin H. Now, while I don't think it got a mention directly, we did get this during Dallin H closing remarks.
We have been reminded of the central role of marriage and families in our Heavenly Father's plan for the eternal destiny of His children.
And that to me says that the family proclamation and all of the values that it contains are still alive and well in his mind and absolutely a focus of his presidency. Now again, anyone claiming to be a prophet, listen up. This is how this works. I made a prediction that the family proclamation would be canonized at this General Conference, and it wasn't. I made a prediction, it didn't happen, and so I'm owning up to it. See how that works? Now with that out of the way, let's get this show on the road and take a look at what the men who, again, claim to speak for God and are upheld as prophets, seers and revelators by members of the church Let's see what they had to say.
I'm having financial difficulties in my business. I have fallen behind in my payment of tithes and offerings. He then asked, "Do you have anything of value?" I don't recall what else he said. I pondered his questions for many days. The only thing I had of value was a car that I needed in my efforts to grow my business. However, I concluded that I should at least make an effort to sell my car, so I cleaned and polished it and placed an ad to sell it.
Now, in 2026, when the church is worth hundreds of billions of dollars, might it be perchance a little tone deaf to be telling these stories of huge financial sacrifice by poor members of the wealthiest church in America? You know that feeling when you're a prophet, seer and revelator, but the revelation just hasn't quite finished loading yet? Sure, you've had 6 months since the last General Conference to plan this address, and sure, you've had those 6 months to fast and pray and approach God and find out what He wants to say to His children. But it's just not quite there, you know? So you get up, you give the address, and you tell people that you'll have more to say about that in your published remarks. I don't know that feeling personally, but Neil L. Anderson certainly does.
Are there situations where divorce should be considered? The answer is yes, there are, but the cautions are significant. I will include prophetic teachings on this subject in the published version of my message.
I honestly cannot think of a reason why he wouldn't give his thoughts on divorce right there and then over the pulpit. Like I said, these talks are prepared months in advance. They're approved months in advance. They're given from a teleprompter. What is this extra 4 weeks going to give him that allows him to say what he wants to say? If you can think of a reason, let me know in the comments. Now, Clark G. Gilbert was a controversial pick for the new apostle because his tenure as Commissioner for Church Education has been described by some in ways that seem frankly Orwellian. So in his first address as an apostle, we wondered what we would see. And surprise, surprise, he spoke about church issues without actually naming any of them. Instead, he paints himself as a hero in a series of stories in which he somehow manages to get people to either join or come back to the church. Sometimes by just telling them, hey, don't worry what your parents might have thought, they'll get it now, according to my belief system.
We eventually asked John why he had never joined the church. He cited the need to honor the faith traditions of his now deceased parents. We helped him realize that they now understood the church, and they would honor his decision.
Forget the traditions of your parents. Don't stay true to their religion. Come join ours. I wonder how he'd feel if someone said that to their Mormon parents. Yeah, I know you raised me in this church, but you're dead now, and so you'll understand if I become Catholic, right? Now, if you left this video thinking, is that it? Is that all you have to say? Well then trust me, I know the feeling. Because as I was sat there in the tabernacle and in the conference centre, in person, I was struck in a way that I'm not struck when I'm at home by the sheer lack of profundity of it all. People have travelled thousands of miles. I had travelled thousands of miles. Not necessarily to be there, but other people had. They had travelled thousands of miles, spent thousands of dollars to be there at Temple Square. There were people there with signs looking for tickets. They had driven 20 hours from other states just to try and get in the building to hear a prophet speak. And I'm sure the act of hearing a prophet speak was meaningful to them. But if we stop and take a look at what was actually said, it wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot of substance. When you consider what's going on in the world right now, what did we hear from the men who claim to speak for an all-powerful deity? For a deity that knows the answers to life's big questions? What did they share? Please let me know in the comments if you disagree or what you thought of the content of General Conference if you watched it. And if you like this video, there is a button specifically for that. And if you want to see more of me and more exclusive behind the scenes content, then consider going to patreon.com/Nemo the Mormon and joining up there for just $6 a month. It is a bargain, frankly. You'll get extra videos, you'll get early access to videos, you'll even get an email newsletter thrown in. So head on over to my Patreon and check that out, and then check out this video right here.